And here we are again, episode 51 of the Horror Guys, where we watch movies and tell you about them and talk about them and share them with you and give our reviews.
Thought you were going to say where we watch movies, so you don't have to.
Sometimes we warn you.
Yeah.
And sometimes we say, you must watch this. Oh, yeah.
And we got some of both kinds this week.
We do have some of each this week, yeah. So what did we see?
Well, this week we looked at Calling Dr. Death, a 1943 Universal horror mystery.
Mm-hmm.
The Christopher Lee free Hammer vampire film, Kiss of the Vampire from 1963. The weird Antichrist from 2009. And the Torture Fest, Martyrs from 2008. Sounds good to you?
It does.
Let's get to it.
What did we see first?
What did we see first? We saw Calling Dr. Death.
And this was hard to find, wasn't it?
No, this one was not.
This was not one of the ones hard to find.
I thought this was going to be hard to find when we first started for it, but no, it was easy enough to get.
Oh, that's right. This is an Inner Sanctum mystery. This was kind of like a sub-series that they did.
Yeah.
Where they had an introduction done by a talking head and a crystal ball. Introducing the series. Yeah, that was kind of fun.
Like the early Crypt Keeper kind of guy.
Yeah, kind of. Yeah.
This was directed by Reginald LeBorg, written by Edward Dean, stars Lon Chaney Jr., Patricia Morrison, J. Carroll Nash, 1 hour, 3 minutes, so it's another shorty. Amazon link in the show notes. Did you like it?
Yeah, it was okay. Yeah.
Yeah, you hit it on the button again.
Yeah.
Not bad, not excellent.
Yeah.
Just
middle of
it's
the
all
road.
right.
A 6.
It was worthy of 1 hour and 3 minutes.
Yeah. Tell us about it.
Well, we start out with a face and a crystal ball. It explains about the inner sanctum and acts all mysterious and spooky as it leads us into the story, and then credits roll. We start out with Dr. Mark Steele hypnotizing a patient. Yep, it's a hypnosis movie.
Yeah, it's one of those where you want the hypnosis trope to be more than it really is in real life.
Hypnosis is magic.
Yeah.
He makes the girl talk, and she hasn't spoken in months due to psychological problems. Nothing is impossible where the mind is concerned, he explains to their parents. Dr. Steele thinks to himself in an inner monologue.
No, that was kind of interesting, I thought.
He does a lot of that.
Yeah,
He just sits there quietly and there's a voiceover as he thinks.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that. That was a nice touch.
And he explains to himself that he's fascinated with neurology. His own life is a failure, or at least he believes that. He goes home to have dinner with his wife, Maria, but she's a no-show. He calls his nurse, Stella, just to talk. Oh, there's a development.
Mm-hmm.
It seems likely that he has a little bit of a crush on Stella.
A little bit.
Finally, at 3 a.m., Maria comes home, dropped off by another man. He wants a divorce, but she won't agree to it. Is there another way out for him? Is that the way it works? He couldn't get a divorce because she wouldn't let him?
I think it was a different
if the
time.
wife or one or the other disagrees, you can get really hostile and take them for a lot of money, but can you force them not to get a divorce?
Times were different.
Yeah, very, very much so.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the next morning he and Stella talk, and we see that it's maybe a little more than a crush, but neither of them can actually act on their feelings because of his wife. When he goes home from work on Friday, Maria has left for the weekend, but Steele thinks he knows where she went. He drives like a maniac and eventually wakes up at his desk in the office on Monday.
Where'd that weekend go, and what did he do?
It's a blackout.
He doesn't remember.
2 detectives come to the office to see him. Maria has been killed sometime during the weekend. Stella tells Steele to lie to the detectives that he was with her all weekend, because I guess she wasn't. He doesn't know. They both immediately suspect that Steele killed his wife during the blackout. Seems like a logical guess. The police take him to identify the body, and he barely recognizes her. She's been burned with acid. Inspector Gregg immediately suspects that Steele did it. Steele finds a button at the crime scene, and his own coat is missing that very same button.
Circumstantial evidence.
Could he have killed his own wife and then blocked it out from his own memory? He still doesn't remember anything from the weekend.
Doesn't remember.
I don't know. I didn't do it. Yeah, maybe I did.
Yeah.
The inspector calls again and explains that they've captured the murderer. The man, Duval, explains to Steele that he didn't kill Maria. Inspector Gregg doesn't really think Duval did it either, and he says something creepy that implies that maybe he knew Maria before her death. And he didn't, as far as we know later on, but it was a strange thing to say. Did you catch that it was a creepy line?
Yeah, kind of, yeah.
Like he knew more than he was saying.
But it didn't go anywhere.
No.
And another thing that I thought might have gone somewhere, too, the body's wife was so badly mutilated that she was barely recognizable, and I was thinking, oh, it's not really her. They switched bodies
I thought
something.
That very, yeah.
But that didn't go anywhere.
It really was her.
Yeah.
Mrs. Duval comes and tells him a sob story about her problems with Mr. Duval, all because of Maria. Eventually, Duval is found guilty and sentenced to death. Steele agonizes over the whole thing and finally decides to hypnotize himself to get the answers he needs. The other guy was found guilty, sentenced to death, but he still thinks maybe he did it.
Mm-hmm. But hypnotism is magic.
Yeah, and he does it. He hypnotizes himself, and with Stella assisting. Greg comes in during the hypnosis, but Stella wakes him up before the inspector can do anything. They play back the recording, and it's recorded on one of those old vinyl album recorder things, which is kind of neat.
Yeah, make a record.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Steele says that he saw Duval at the lodge, and he left him there. So the recording on the record clears him. Greg still doesn't believe it, and suggests that Stella may be in on it as well. Could Steele's will to live be strong enough that his subconscious would lie under hypnosis? Is that even possible? Well, a few months pass, and then there's a fire at Steele's office. Greg thinks it looks like a bottle of acid spilled and caused the fire. The fire seems to have been set with a device connected to the telephone that spilled the acid when the phone rang. Either Stella or Steele could have called that number, and all of Steele's personal records were burned. Dun, dun, dun. On the night before Duval's execution, Stella and Steele go out to dinner. This should make a series called Stella and Steele. They go out to dinner. They're both very upset about what's about to happen. Steele takes Stella back to the office and secretly hypnotizes her. We see that Stella took money from Dr. Steele and then split it with Mr. Duval. Steele did go to the lodge and did fight with Maria, but then Stella went inside and killed Maria, then burned the body. Did I say that right?
Yeah.
Okay. Later, we see Stella instructing Steele what to say while he was hypnotized and being recorded. Lastly, she set the fire in the office to cover up the canceled checks that would show she had been stealing the money. Stella wakes up, and Steele and Greg are standing there. Greg arrests her for the murder. She basically admitted to the murder in front of him while under hypnosis. Greg explains that he never really suspected Steele. He was just using him to find the real murderer. Greg gets a phone call, explaining that there has been another murder across town. There's no rest for the brilliant inspector. The end. And we never get a wrap-up from the crystal ball head.
No, we should have. Yeah. He'll introduce the next one.
Yeah, I assume he'll probably introduce, there were 6 of them. Mm-hmm. Inner Sanctum was a radio mystery and horror show that began airing in 1941 on the radio. Universal then created a 6-movie series of similarly themed movies as a sort of a tie-in. This was the first of those 6 films. This also explains the head in the crystal ball scene, a sort of stand-in for the usual narrator or host that a radio show would always have. There's murder, and acid, and hypnosis, but this really isn't much more horrific than any given episode of Columbo. There's a lot of inner monologue as Dr. Steele narrates his own thoughts and actions. He seems to think about himself a lot. That kind of drama is fine on a radio program where you need a lot of explanation, but it kind of stands out in a movie.
It was very radio-ish of them.
Yeah. Inspector Gregg is J. Carrol Naish, and he just oozes with suspicion and creepiness. But it turns out to be all right in the end. This all feels like a pilot episode for maybe a detective series. Lon Chaney finally gets to do some acting in this one, and he shows us that he's really not that great as an actor. Very bland.
Yeah.
I mean, it beats, being covered in bandages and dragging your leg around as a mummy, but, I think he peaked in The Werewolf.
It was all downhill from there.
Kinda, yeah. So we're both kind of meh on this one?
Yeah.
If you get a chance to watch it, go ahead. If you want to be completionist, go ahead. It's not bad. It's just meh.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Like watching an old episode of Columbo.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And the detective reminded me of Columbo a few times. He's in and out, and he's like, oh, one more thing, and, that kind of stuff. And, proto-Columbo.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. Hungry?
Why?
Vampire's Kiss. Vampires.
Out in 1963. I did not see this one when it came out.
The Kiss of the Vampire. I'm pretty sure I did not either.
I never saw it. Yeah.
Directed by Don Sharp, written by Anthony Hines, stars Clifford Evans, Edward D. Souza, and Noel Willman. 1 hour, 28 minutes. Amazon link as usual. Like it?
Mm-hmm.
I did like it, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It was kind of different.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Not your typical rehash of the Dracula story.
Uh-huh.
Well, we begin at a funeral. A well-dressed man in a top hat watches from above, and as the funeral progresses, he comes down to stand over the grave. He sprinkles some holy water on the coffin, and then drives a shovel through the coffin. Whoever was in there screams, bleeds profusely, and everyone runs away. We see the dead woman in the coffin with her fangs hanging out as the credits roll.
She was a vampire.
Surprising, neither of us.
Yeah. Considering the title. Yeah.
Well, a man in a big house on the hill watches a car below through a telescope as the car breaks down. A pair of newlyweds, Gerald and Marianne Harcourt, have run out of gas, and he goes off walking towards a gas station. Marianne runs from the car, and she runs right into the weird man from the funeral, who warns her to go back to the car. Gerald eventually returns, without gas, and they get towed into town, where they're going to be stranded for a couple of days. There's no gas station in town. This took place like 1900
before gas
or
stations.
something.
Yeah, it was 19 early. Yeah.
How dumb do you have to be to drive through Eastern Europe in a car before gasoline had been invented?
Don't worry, we'll find a gas station. No.
No, they didn't.
It's like a major event to get the gas. Yeah.
The innkeeper and his wife are very strange people who look and act like they haven't had a guest in years. The man is overjoyed to have them, but his wife would rather they weren't there at all. That night, a carriage arrives to deliver a letter. It's an invitation for Gerald and Marianne to come have dinner with Dr. Ravna, who lives in the big house on the hill. The innkeeper says, hey, Ravna throws a great party, and recommends that they go.
It was a great party.
It was, yeah.
Yeah.
Dr. Ravna welcomes them in, and he looks at Marianne hungrily. He introduces them to Carl and Sabina, his children. We soon see Sabina digging up the grave where the woman got shoveled earlier. She sprouts fangs and then fights with the man in the top hat, bites his hand, and runs away. Marianne and Gerald, along with Dr. Ravna, listen to Carl play the piano while the top hat man disinfects the wound on his hand and burns it to keep it from getting infected. This is the same thing that happened in the Blood of Dracula? Curse of Dracula? I keep getting the Hammer ones mixed up.
Curse of Dracula, yeah.
When Peter Cushing got bit.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Burn it off.
Seems to be a Hammer trope now.
Yeah.
Carl's music seems to mesmerize Marianne. They go back to the hotel for the evening, where they find the innkeeper's wife crying over some things she had hidden inside a bench. The next morning, the innkeeper's wife sets one place too many for breakfast, almost as if she were expecting one more visitor. It seems the innkeeper and his wife lost their daughter Tanya not so long ago under mysterious circumstances. The Harcourts meet the man in the hat, whose name is Professor Zimmer. Now, we find out about Tanya later, but did they ever actually say that they'd lost their daughter? I don't remember that ever actually coming up in conversation.
Not in conversation, no.
We figured it out later and by looking at the credits and so forth.
Well, that's what their assumption was. Well, yeah, the innkeeper's wife was talking to her about it, yeah.
By name and stuff?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, Carl shows up at the hotel and says the petrol won't be delivered until Sunday. Yeah, miles to the gas station.
Mm-hmm. And then they got to deliver it by, horse-drawn carriage. Literally, that's what he said.
At some point, having a car is just not quite worth it.
Yeah.
And he invites Gerald and Marianne to a big formal party later tonight. Since they're going to be in town anyway, they agree to attend. Zimmer walks in on the conversation and mentions, hey, the weather's getting kind of bright outside. Carl and Sabina's eyes bug out, and they look surprised, and then rush outside to the carriage, which speeds away.
So vampires can go out in this movie on cloudy days. As long as
there's
it's
not bright
direct
sunshine.
Yeah.
I've seen movies like that. That's not a unique thing.
Hmm.
That night at the party, they all wear masks. There's a lot of dancing, and Marianne wanders off and finds Dr. Ravna asleep in a coffin with blood running from his mouth. Because, vampires drool when they sleep.
Some people do, yeah.
Blood?
Well, he just ate before he went to bed. Oh.
Snack.
Yeah.
He gets up, not as dead as she thought. He hypnotizes her and bites her while Gerald and Sabina celebrate in the main ballroom. She drugs Gerald and takes him upstairs, but he passes out before even getting up there. Downstairs, the band leaves, and all the other guests unmask themselves. They're all vampires. They all dress in white and watch while Ravna brings out Marianne, also dressed in white and clearly under Ravna's control. He introduces her as a new disciple, and we see that this is basically a vampire cult with Ravna as their leader. Gerald confronts Carl, and Carl explains that he has no idea who Marianne is. Everyone insists that Gerald came to the party alone and got drunk. Kevin, who? Who? I'm the horror guy. There is no other guy. Who? Yeah, it's just kind of dumb. Okay, so everybody insists that Gerald was never married. There was no wife. And they nearly run him over with their carriage, but Gerald is rescued by Professor Zimmer. He later wakes up in the hotel, and the innkeeper doesn't remember Marianne either. He calls the police.
That's what he says, anyway.
They all say it.
Yeah.
And the police don't believe him since Gerald came to and they don't believe him either since everyone says Gerald came to town alone. Now, on the other hand, Zimmer believes him. Zimmer explains all about vampires.
Well, Zimmer saw her.
Yeah, he's
he's not in cahoots with the vampires. So,
yeah. And says that Ravna is one of them. His daughter had the disease, and it was her that he killed with a shovel at the beginning of the movie. Zimmer gives Gerald something to make him sleep. That night, Gerald heads up to the big house and is immediately captured by the vampires. Why Zimmer didn't go out? Well, I guess Zimmer's got his own plan for that night.
Yeah, he did.
Yeah.
He was making preparations still.
Normally you'd go track down the vampires in the day and stake them, but not this time.
Well, they don't really sleep during the day, so, no.
That's true. These guys can be up in the daytime.
Yeah.
They bring in Marianne, and she doesn't show any interest in Gerald. Ravna orders Tanya.
Hypnotism is magic.
I think she's been bitten once or twice. She's under their influence pretty strongly. Ravna orders Tanya, the innkeeper's not really dead daughter, to initiate Gerald into their group. Zimmer comes to the rescue, and the three of them all run downstairs and out of the house. Since it's daylight, the vampires cannot follow. Marianne passes out, but for some reason she isn't injured by the daylight any worse than that. She hadn't quite been completely converted yet.
No, not really.
Zimmer has been planning to perform a ceremony for months, and tonight is the full moon, so it's time to try it.
And there was something about Capricorn, too. It's got to be like the full moon in Capricorn or something, too.
Waiting months, yeah.
Yeah. Lined up just right.
The vampires are all trapped inside the big house, since Zimmer has warded it with crosses on the doors. Meanwhile, Marianne wakes up and starts back to rescue Ravna and the other vampires. Gerald and the priest catch up to her just as Zimmer's spell takes over. 1,000 rubber bats on strings flood the castle, killing all the vampires.
Exhibit A.
Yeah, just like
this.
Yeah.
And you could see the strings.
The trivia I read said all the bats came from Woolworths. So yeah. Looks like the dollar store nowadays.
It was about as advanced effects as that. Okay.
1,000 rubber bats on strings flood the castle, killing all the vampires except for Marianne, who wakes up feeling much better. The end.
But really the flock of rubber bats coming in was the only real laughable part of it.
Well, also, this came out the same year as Alfred Hitchcock's The Birds, so they delayed this so people wouldn't compare the two.
Yeah.
Big flock of flying things at the end.
Yeah, flock of flying birds on strings.
Well, this film plays up the evil, demonic, magical nature of vampires rather than the simple, blood-starved Christopher Lee-type vampire movies also by Hammer.
And it was more of a charisma cult kind of thing, too.
That too, yeah.
Yeah, rather than brute force.
Everyone always says vampires are creatures of the devil, and this film shows us what that means. This was really very different. I'm surprised that I don't remember seeing this one before, as it's really good and not particularly bloody. It's not just another rehashing of the Dracula story. It goes to some new places and isn't nearly as predictable as many other vampire films. Still, it does have some dumb points. Wife? What wife? You came here alone.
Really? Like that's going to work, and he's just going to go away. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I guess I only thought I was married.
When they could have just disposed of him.
Yeah, just kill the guy.
Yeah. He was knocked out, and they have no qualms against killing people. Why didn't they just...
They did kill people.
Why didn't they just dispose of him? It was more dramatic for the movie this way, but...
Well, I hadn't even
rather
thought of
than
that.
trying that dumb gaslighting thing and, expecting him to go away or something. He's gonna... Oh, you're right. I didn't have a wife. I'll leave now. What do they think he's going to say this?
Or turn them both. They were going to initiate him there at the end anyway. They were going to turn him too. Why didn't they just do them both? They had him drunk and passed out on the table.
Yeah, he was hot for her, but why not do them both?
One bite's all it would take.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. You didn't mention too that Noel Willman in this role as Dr. Ava looks like the love child of Peter Cushing and Christopher Lee.
He does. He's got Peter really Cushing's hair, exactly the same hair, and the way the manner of where he moves and the way he acts and stuff, he looks like Christopher Lee and Dracula. Yeah. He definitely was kind of channeling both of them in this.
He was, yeah, it was interesting. Yeah.
But yeah, whoever did Peter Cushing's hair, it's the same guy.
Yeah, and a little bit of resemblance too.
A little bit.
Yeah, but the hair definitely.
Yeah, I wonder if they wanted Cushing for this and couldn't get him.
Maybe, yeah.
I don't know. Did Peter Cushing ever play a vampire?
Let's do his hair instead. Play a vampire?
I don't remember him ever
He played
being
Van Helsing. I don't think he ever played
Lots of Van Helsing, yeah.
I don't think he ever played one. Not that I know
Not that I remember.
Not that I know of.
Well, short time.
Mm-hmm. We saw one called Guilt.
Guilt.
It was pretty good.
You feel guilty for watching it?
No,
it was pretty good.
But it was pretty darn good.
It was long, too, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. Yeah,
28 minutes and 3 seconds.
Short movie length, yeah.
One of the longer shorts.
Mm-hmm.
Directed by Heidrich Hagum. Stars Sissel Dalgard Thompson. Stars Sophia Nolser, Runa Hagum, Jonas Beck Jonsson, and Paul Danielson. As you can guess, this sounds very...
You're not giving spoilers on this one, are you?
Netherlands-like.
Not
Not much.
Easy on the synopsis on this one. Because you need to see this one not knowing too much about it.
A woman wakes up in the middle of the night. Did you like it?
Mm-hmm.
You did say that.
I did.
I liked it too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
A woman wakes up in the middle of the night and sees a child standing in the corner of her room. When she turns on the light, he's gone. She's a home nurse, and her doctor/boss is concerned about her abilities after some kind of trauma. He sends her to a new assignment and tells her to take more long walks to clear her head. She lives on an isolated island with her ailing patient who doesn't have long to live. The patient explains that she woke up last night and saw what looked like maybe a little boy or a little man outside the window. The nurse, whose name is Andrea, has a flashback to when her own son died after falling on some rocks. Andrea hears more noises that night coming from a wardrobe, but there's nothing inside but her cat. That night, she sees some nightmarish things. But is it a nightmare? And better yet, why are these things happening to her?
We find out.
One good jump scare and it's a cat.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, those cats.
Cats are evil. Yeah.
Horror movie cats are always evil. Well, this is really good. It's a longish, lengthy short, but it's well worth the time.
Yes.
There is subtitled dialogue, but it's not excessive.
Very little.
She's alone a lot.
Mm-hmm.
We still don't know really why all this came about. We do know what causes it at the end, but we don't know why.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought maybe the ending was a little too open-ended and vague, but I was entertained throughout. It's very well made.
Yeah.
Very good production values.
Really is, yeah. Beautiful cinematography. Yeah.
Speaking of beautiful cinematography and very well made.
Oh, yeah.
Antichrist, 2009.
What a beautiful movie and so boring. This should have been a short film, I think. I think this would have been entertaining if it was like 15 minutes long.
Did you read my review on the Horror Guys site?
No.
Okay.
You say that too?
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
You say that same thing. And brilliant actors. My gosh, these two acted their guts out.
This movie had everything it took to be great.
And
it was not.
It lacked greatness. Yeah.
Directed by Lars von Trier. Written by Lars von Trier. And he also did the movie Melancholia, which we watched like right before we started the podcast. We don't have a review of it.
I liked a lot more than he did.
But almost everything we're going to say comment-wise on this one applies to that one as well. I thought they were very, very similarly disappointing.
I thought Melancholia was not disappointing.
I think that was maybe a little better than this.
At
least most of it made sense.
Yeah, and a lot better. I was much more entertained with Melancholia.
Yeah, and there's a third one in the series that I really don't have any interest in seeing now.
I kind of do. I know, like, am I going to like it like I liked Melancholia, or kind of hate it like I hated Antichrist?
Guess we'll have to see that one.
Yeah, we
Nymphomaniac, or something like that.
Yeah, the trilogy of depression.
That sounds like fun, don't it?
Yeah.
Well, this one stars Willem Dafoe, Charlotte Gainsbourg. Is it Gainsbourg or Gainsborough? I think I've heard Gainsborough.
I've heard both.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure.
Charlotte Gainsborough and Storm Achichi Salstrom as the little boy.
Very small role.
1 hour, 48 minutes. Very small boy.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And if you want to pick this one up, there is a link in the show notes. Well, a baby dies in the first 5 minutes. The parents go to a remote cabin in the woods, and she goes crazy. They talk a lot of philosophy. The end. Okay.
Synopsis done.
Maybe for a summary that's not quite as pretentious as the rest of the film. Prologue.
Yes, it's divided into prologue and then chapters. And
pretentious step one right there.
Each one is announced. Yes.
We start out with Willem Dafoe and Charlotte Gainsborough, known only as he and she, having rather graphic sex in the shower. And in the laundry room. And in the bedroom.
And meanwhile, their little boy is climbing out the window and falling to his death.
In the next room, the baby wakes up, gets out of his crib, goes over to the window that's blown open in the snowstorm, climbs up, and falls out the window to his death, while the parents are still busy in the bedroom, oblivious to what happened.
So there's some guilt there.
We see his parents smiling at each other, so hey, at least the sex was good.
Mm-hmm.
Chapter 1. Grief. They're at the funeral. She passes out and ends up in the hospital with depression. They both blame themselves for the death.
I don't think she was actually hospitalized for depression. I mean, make it sound like that. I mean,
there's nothing physically wrong with her.
Well, I think dehydrated, didn't eat.
Right.
But depression itself doesn't put you in a hospital bed.
This level of depression might.
Yeah. I'm sorry. It just sounded odd the way you said that.
She gets hysterical. She's a complete mess, but he helps her through it.
He's a psychiatrist. He's a therapist, psychiatrist.
If he's not, he certainly wants to be.
Oh, he is.
Okay.
Yeah, it's mentioned. Yeah.
She gets hysterical, beating her head against the toilet seat.
Because they debate whether he should be treating her or somebody else, and they decide he should.
Wrong choice.
Mm.
Once she gets hysterical, she beats her head against the toilet seat, and he stops her so they can have more sex. They decide to go to their country cabin in the woods called Eden to help get over the crisis. Chapter 2. Pain. On the way there, they take a train, and he hypnotizes her. It's like a running theme this week. She dreams of walking through a hazy countryside that looks very dark and mysterious.
And his hypnotism is less of the magic kind. It's more of
a real,
guided imagery, relaxation, positive thinking kind of thing. It's not quite the same level of magical hypnotism
They get off the train and walk to the cabin, and he spots a deer with a dead baby deer hanging from its tail. She suddenly has some kind of aversion to standing or walking on grass, but he comes up with a silly exercise to help her get over it. Like, suddenly she just can't bear to walk on grass.
Well, it's because she was there with the kid, and it reminds her of the kid, and I don't know. Reasons were unclear to me.
Lots of things are unclear.
Mm-hmm.
She does the exercise, then watches a baby bird fall out of a tree and get eaten within seconds. The acorns keep falling on the roof, and we're told that each one of them is dying. The symbolism here beats us over the head, and not nearly as subtly as the acorns. She's depressed, tormented, emotional, and hysterical, and he is annoyingly logical and analytic.
And calm and helping her.
They go for a walk, and he sees a fox eating its own stillborn baby. The fox looks up at him and says, "Chaos reigns."
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't Rocket Raccoon either.
No, it wasn't.
Chapter 3. Despair. During a storm, he goes up into the attic and finds a bunch of pictures of demons and medieval torture. The pictures in the crazy book he found must have been hers. She was writing her thesis on cruelty to women, but instead her takeaway was that women are evil and deserve it. They have sex again, and she wants him to beat her up. He refuses, so she goes outside into the woods to masturbate. But that's okay, because he changes his mind, goes outside, and beats her up as she asked.
Yes, you heard that right. Yeah.
The autopsy report comes and mentions that there was an abnormality in the baby's feet. He finds in a photo that she'd put the boy's shoes on the wrong feet. Then he notices it in all the pictures of the kid. He thinks she did it on purpose to make the baby suffer. Or maybe the baby just has weird feet and she put the shoes on backwards to cover it for it. We don't know.
We don't know. Yeah.
She hits him over the head and other more sensitive places with a log and knocks him out. She then drills a hole in his leg and bolts a huge weight to it.
Yeah, that was an owie.
She's way crazier than we gave her credit for.
Mm-hmm.
He wakes up and crawls outside to hide in a tiny little cave where he battles a vulture that won't stay dead. She digs after him until the cave collapses, burying him. Chapter 4. The Three Beggars. Dun, dun, dun.
Dun, dun, dun.
She digs him out, but he's not quite dead. She drags him back into the house. She explains that when the three beggars arrive, someone must die. She's going to sacrifice him when the time comes. The fox, the deer, and the vulture come inside. They're the three beggars. He finally manages to pull the weight out of his leg bone, jumps up, and strangles her. He burns her body and begins the long trek on crutches back to wherever they parked. As he walks, we see the whole countryside is covered with ghostly bodies that only we can see and don't actually seem to mean anything other than it looks cool. Epilogue.
Epilogue.
As he walks back to the road, we see the three beggars again, and they seem to be seeing him off. He then sees hundreds of faceless people coming out of the woods past him, which also looks really cool but doesn't seem to mean anything. The end.
So my summary of all that was splendid acting, beautiful locations and camera work, pretentious artsy crap.
The P word comes out again.
I didn't dig this really.
Well, mine says, this is another movie that should have been a 20-minute short.
You said that too. Huh.
It took them 41 minutes to actually get to the cabin. She didn't drill the hole in his leg until an hour and 18-minute mark. The last 20 minutes were entertaining, but that's when she starts getting to be like any other crazy woman who saw misery once too many times character would do. It's all this philosophy and psychology and mysticism, and it doesn't get good until it gets to be the predictable horror crap that we've all seen 100 times before.
Well,
they do that part well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
There's some great camera work, and the film looks really good. Very colorful and visually fascinating. Mm-hmm. The acting is excellent all around, and there's only 2 actors. The problem is it's just so talky and philosophic that it's hard not to see how pretentiously artsy-fartsy this is. And there's a ton of things that make no sense and serve no other purpose other than to look neat.
Symbolism.
And what's the deal with the title? Was the baby the Antichrist? Where'd they pull that idea out of?
Pulled it out of their butt somewhere. I don't know.
You know, I've seen like The Omen and dozens of Antichrist movies, and the kid had weird feet. Like maybe it was cloven hooves or something?
No.
Kind of maybe? And
no.
Other than that, the kid seems perfectly normal.
I don't think the kid was supposed to be the Antichrist. I don't know where they got the title from.
Yeah, I totally do not get it.
People are writing papers about this movie.
I wrote one. I don't get it. Okay. It's something.
Can't recommend this one. Yeah.
Anyway, that's the first in the Depression series by Lars von Trier, followed by
Melancholia is better, yes.
Which is the entire Earth is
science fiction.
You know, basically.
Yeah.
People see this other planet that comes into the solar system. It's going to crash into the Earth. Mm-hmm. So they know that in X number of days, the world is going to end. And you'd think that would make rioting in the streets and parties and crazy people being crazy. Instead, they all go to the country house and they're morbid for the rest of their lives. And it's...
Well, just this one family is.
So
we don't see the rest of the families or rest of the world, what's happening out. It's very focused on this one house.
A little Mad Max would have been a whole lot more interesting.
It's not that kind of movie.
We may have to watch that one again for the podcast.
Mm-hmm. It's not like horror. It's not horror though. Science fiction.
Antichrist is just barely. I guess it's.
Well,
yeah, I guess you have to call it a horror. Yeah.
Movie. Yes, I would really consider that a horror movie. But Melancholia, I'd consider science fiction.
Well, the planet's crashing together, but other than that, there's nothing science fiction-y about it.
Well, isn't that enough?
Well, it's a disaster movie. I mean,
yeah,
it could be any kind of disaster coming.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
So, one final movie?
Martyrs. From 2008. And this is French. Directed by Pascal Laugier.
With subtitles.
Yeah. Stars Morjana Aloui, Mylene Jampoy, and Catherine Bagan. 1 hour, 39 minutes. Link in the show notes. Did you like this one?
I did.
Yeah, I think I kind of did too.
I didn't kind of like it. I did. Yeah.
Well,
it wasn't what I expected.
If you've been following us for the past couple of months, we've been kind of watching a torture movie every week, it seems like. The over-the-top, nasty ones that go a little too far.
This one takes you to a place that you do not expect.
It does, yeah.
Yeah.
And I think this may have been the most entertaining of all the torture movies we've seen so far.
I think so, too. Yeah.
Well, we see old footage from
Don't give too much away. I see that long synopsis you got there. Don't spoil it for these nice people.
Read the review on horrorguys.com. Okay, I'll keep it shorter then. We see old footage from 1971 that shows where they rescued a child, Lucy, from an abusive kidnapper. She wasn't raped, the expert tells us, but she was seriously abused. The grainy old video continues to show her growing up in an orphanage, and she appears to have made only one friend, Anna, the entire time. We see early on that Lucy cuts herself. Credits roll. 15 years later, young Antoine wants to drop out of school and be with his girlfriend, but his family is mostly just annoyed. We see a newspaper clipping on the wall that shows that his sister recently won an award on her swim team. There's a knock at the door, and a woman is standing there with a shotgun who immediately kills both parents. The woman says the parents did something to her and then kills the son. She goes looking for the daughter, who isn't very hard to find. Once they're all dead, the woman starts crying to herself. The woman is the grown-up Lucy, who calls Anna to come and help her clean up.
So 15 years later, she thinks she has tracked down the people that did that terrible thing to her.
These look like your typical
and
standard
the way it started is not at all what you expected, because it's just a happy little home of,
While she waits, she's attacked by some kind of a feral woman creature who cuts her repeatedly with a straight razor. She runs outside, straight into Anna, who has finally arrived. Anna goes inside, verifies that the family is dead, but doesn't find the monster. Anna sews up the huge cuts on Lucy's back and then helps clean up the bodies. Lucy says the parents were the ones who kidnapped and abused her all those years ago. She recognized them from a recent newspaper photo about the girls' swim team.
And so from that kind of point, you kind of think, yeah, she was horribly abused and she's gone kind of crazy.
She probably sees these people everywhere.
And maybe she is mistaken about, and this feral, at that point I was thinking the feral woman was in her head.
Okay.
It wasn't real. Mm-hmm. That, this horrible experience that she had caused
it gave me that impression right away too, that it was imaginary. Yeah
So you kind of think she might be crazy, but because of what happened to her. Yeah
Anna once again rescues Lucy from the crazy woman creature, and it starts looking a lot like Lucy is imagining the monster. The mother, whom we thought was dead, isn't quite there yet, and Anna locks Lucy in the bedroom and tries to get the mother out of the house. We then get occasional flashbacks to Lucy as a little girl, strapped to a toilet chair and abused by someone. At one point, she gets loose and finds another woman held prisoner, but she's not able to help and leaves her behind. And I think we probably should stop there.
We should intrigue you. And then something completely unexpected happens.
Yeah. This movie has a couple of different twists.
A couple of very, what? They're doing what now? What? Yeah. it just, so unexpected and so well done because you think it's going one way and then it goes another direction.
This didn't have the gritty realism or sexual content of The Bunny Game, and it didn't have the comedic elements of Grotesque or the taboo nature of a Serbian film.
I don't think this had any comedic elements.
But it definitely lives in the same category. This was much more a fictional story with plot, characters, and a story to tell. Still, the real horror here is that we all know this sort of thing happens regularly in real life. Maybe not to the extent showed here, but this probably has all really happened at one time or another. There are a lot of surprises here. I was surprised to see the family gunned down. I was surprised to see the killer feral women monster. I was surprised to see... I've got 4 or 5 other surprises listed here that I'm not going to go into.
Mm-hmm.
And the ending, surprisingly, made me think of Hellraiser.
Kinda.
Going to a different place through pain is kind of what that whole series is about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Transcendence.
Yeah.
Okay. So anyway, I give this one a big thumb. Of all of them.
Of all the torture movies?
Well, of all the 4 that we saw this week. This one's definitely the winner for me.
I like Kiss of the Vampire a lot.
Liked it, but this one's better.
This one's better. Okay.
Yeah.
So various thumbs up there. We're both kind of unanimous on calling Dr. Death as being blah.
Yeah.
And the Antichrist as being no.
Yeah. And Kiss of the Vampire being a pretty good win, and Martyrs being a definite. And the Guilt. Yeah. The Guilt was good.
Yeah.
The short. Yeah.
Guilt is good.
Yeah.
Well, that's our show for this week. Stop in at horrorguys.com, read our reviews. Check us out on Twitter at horrorbulletin. Email us, horrorguysmail@gmail.com. Now, next week, episode 52, our 1-year anniversary.
Mm-hmm.
We'll be discussing some more great classics in modern horror. We'll take a look at... You know what we're going to see. It's not our best
Considering
selection.
that we've cheated and already seen one of these movies and he's calling it classics of modern horror.
They're classics. Just not necessarily great.
Yeah, go ahead.
The Mad Ghoul from 1943. Paranoiac from 1963. Nekromantic from 1987. It's his favorite movie of the year, I think. And Livid from 2011. Well, there's a preview of what he thinks about Nekromantic.
You're calling it a classic of horror. Okay.
Well, you're going to have to tune in next week to hear his
spoiler.
review.
I didn't hate the movie, but I don't call it a classic horror.
It's something, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I'm Brian.
I'm Kevin.
And we'll see you next week.